getting a little late here. Town Meeting TV, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. Regina, you all set?
Let me just get the.
Recording in progress.
Awesome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Do we have any agenda additions or changes for tonight?
Not for me.
Councilors? Seeing nothing, then we will no need to approve of the agenda, and we will jump into public to be heard. So this is the portion of tonight's meeting where if there are any members from the public who wish to bring something to the attention of the board that is not on the agenda, then now is the time to do so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about things that are on the agenda, please wait until we get to that point in time, and we'll make sure for public comment then. So starting off with people in the room, if you don't mind raising your hand if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention. Okay. Not seeing any hands in the room. Going into Zoom land, I see Jason, your hand is up. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself? Floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you for fielding my question. I noticed that all the consent items passed at the last meeting, and of particular interest to me would be Passion Fruit Farms. And my question being, did the council have a change in heart in regards to cannabis, or did an outside agency force your hand?
I don't have the language in front of me, Regina. Do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
The City Council's Land Development Code amendments that they put into place in October are, we think, still in line with the guidance that we got throughout the process, which is you can use zoning to regulate cannabis uses. The DRB decision on Passion Fruit Farms is a home occupation approval. And I think what we learned in the process is that the home occupation is a use in and of itself. And it's hard to describe this. It's a use in and of itself, regardless of the type of use that's happening within that home occupation. And so essentially the Development Review Board found that that particular application met the home occupation requirement and granted them approval. The local cannabis commission's authority is to ensure that the land development code and the zoning is met for cannabis applications. And so therefore, since the Development Review Board issued the land development approval, then the local Cannabis Control Commission is limited in their authority to simply say yes, because now it met the LDC, and so the license was issued.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Anybody else out in Zoom land? Not seeing any hands up there. So we will move off of public to be heard, and we will move into our public hearing, agenda item 5A on the municipal dog ordinance.
Yeah, so I can introduce this if you would like. So there are, we have this on the business item 2 under 6B. So there are documents in the packet there, but we've been having conversations about this the last couple of meetings since the council had their first dog bite hearing. And what's in front of you is a dog ordinance change to more closely align with what the town dog ordinance has. And it lays out some parameters for when a dog bites a dog, and that could in and of itself elevate to the point of a hearing. We also have some rules of procedure to define and guide how that process would work.
Thank you, Regina. And so just in essence, what this new ordinance would allow for us to do is for any such as dog on dog or canine on canine type of instances where there is a bite, if you will, it will allow us as a city council to do something about it. Whereas what had happened previously is we were not able to do anything on any dog-on-dog violence. So this would help to fix that, so that we would be able to, and as Regina has said, that's it largely in a nutshell. There are some specifics within the ordinance, but since this is a public hearing, if there are any members of the public who have any comments, questions, concerns, would love to hear that. And I guess I should also say, just process-wise, so we have this we'll have this public hearing now. Shortly after this agenda item, we will then revisit it as a business item, where at that point we will then make the decision about whether to move forward with it, where we can approve of it, and it would become a new or a revised ordinance, or to ask staff to go back and do some more research. Please, Richard.
Do you have a sense of how many of these cases this is going to create for you in a year?
If I recall correctly, the town has done this 5 or 6 times in the last 2 or 3 years. Those numbers are approximate and based off of memory. So if we had the same amount as the entire town did, that's approximately what we would see. If these were, if we split it 50-50, then about half that. Potentially. But we'll see. We also have the dog park, so.
We're also tired quarters.
Right, with sidewalks and, yep. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Both in the room, Zoom land. Okay, sorry, now I'm back into Zoom land. iPhone Annie.
Hey, Andrew, it's Annie Cooper. How are you?
Good, you?
Good, thanks. I'd like to thank the board for the significant amount of effort and thoughtfulness and time that you've all put into this situation. And most importantly, I'd like to thank Janelle and her family for taking the time to come and speak so thoroughly and also with such great patience and care about the situation. And I applaud your efforts and thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Annie. All right, not seeing any other hands up either in the room or out in Zoom. So we will go ahead and close the public hearing. And we will now jump into business item 6A and an interview and potential consider the appointment of Tacy Lincoln for the Bike Walk Committee. And I hope I didn't mispronounce your first name.
No,
Okay, great.
Spot on.
Great.
Thank you.
That's not common for me.
Well, it's not an easy name, so.
Great. So thank you for being here. Appreciate your time, both being here as well as your interest. If you don't mind, just go ahead and recap why you're interested and what you hope you would be able to do.
Sure. At the beginning of the year, I attended one of the community sessions that our state or our local legislators were holding, and I asked the question to them about what is it that we can do to help the work that they're doing for us, and the answer was get involved. And I find myself in this great position of having recently left my been retired. I recently retired from St. Michael's College, and I'm at a point where I'm excited to be able to give back to the community that I've been part of for 28 years and finally have that chance to have that time to do it. So there was the opening, and I thought, well, I've walked these streets for hundreds of miles over the years, so I'd like, and it'd be something of interest to me to be able to be part of, to ensure that others in our community have the, that access and the availability and the space to walk and bike. And I know there are bigger issues involved with it. I need to learn about those, but I also know I've been part of organizations where we've done that sort of assessment and planning. So I feel like I could bring those skills to the group, even though I'm not 100% sure what those issues that need to be addressed are.
Right. Appreciate that. Other questions, counselors?
Tacy, I have to just mention, I know I was appointed to the Winooski Valley Parkway, and I know that you volunteered for that too. And I was not aware that someone was, when I was appointed, that someone from the community was also interested in the position. I'm willing to have that discussion with you at some point. Let's not do it right now. I think
No, George, I think you are way more qualified
Oh,
than I.
I'm not sure about that even remotely, but
No, I was-
I'm happy to have that discussion.
No,
with you at some point.
I was, as I said, I was looking for opportunities to be involved, and you know, I enjoy that, the just being part of that idea of helping work with the network of the paths and the accessibility to all. When I learned that you were part of that, I was like, wow, you are the best person, because you have the history of working with these communities, and maybe I'll replace you someday.
That'd be great. Absolutely. I think the bike walk committee is really good. I mean, they do a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah.
And I think as Dan can tell you, also with the Regional Planning Commission, you know, we're really planning a whole. They're looking at a whole integrated network, and I'm sure being at St. Mike's, you're aware of that. So that's going to help you. That could be very helpful in that.
Yeah,
position.
and I've had the good fortune to attend a couple of the meetings, so I'm starting to get a sense of what the work will entail, and you know, the work, just sort of the infrastructure stuff, as well as the commitment to the community, and so I'm looking forward to being able to give my time in that way, in what I feel is a very meaningful way. So thank you, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Did you have any questions for us? No, it's okay. It's awesome how this.
No, as I said, I'm still learning. I think as I get more, dig in a little deeper, I think the group that I've met with, they're very competent. They're very astute in terms of what it is that we're working on. So I'm going to follow their lead for a little while, and maybe I'll be back to visit with questions. But at this point, I just appreciate you even entertaining my application and the opportunity to speak. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Appreciate it. So with no other questions, do we want to pause this and enter into executive session later on in the meeting to discuss? Or are we feeling confident and ready to make a decision now? I know personally I'm ready.
I'm very confident and ready. Yeah.
Great. Would anybody like to make the motion to appoint?
Certainly. I'll make the motion that we appoint Tacy Lincoln to the Bike Walk Committee for a term of, I'm not sure how many years.
3 years?
For 3 years?
One
1 year? Oh, okay.
I'll second that.
Great. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Great. So that passed unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations, and thank you again.
Thank you.
And so now we will go back to the discussion around discussion consideration of a dog ordinance amendments and rules of procedure for dog bite hearings.
Okay. So what you've got in your packet is the memo, which describes that Claudine and both Rick Gary have taken a look at the rules of procedure and answered some of the questions that you folks had at the last meeting. So I've got her answers here for you in the memo, and then also in the rules of procedure document is some comments identifying some of the sections that we might want to think about editing. And then we also have a question from Rick Gary. So in the hearing that you had, Rick essentially sort of presided over the testimony. So the VLCT rules of procedure that we worked with had the council president playing that role, or the vice president. I've edited it to be both, so we can decide moving forward what makes the right sense. we didn't necessarily have that conversation going through. We just had that document that was from the LCT that didn't consider a police officer playing that role, but they have done that for the town. And I don't know that there were any challenges with having it run that way. So I thought the best thing at this stage was to have the rules of procedure be both. So you have the option going forward. Also, the rules of procedure, as you know, they're not an ordinance. They're easier to modify and change as
Right.
you guys want to think about making changes over time.
Right. Great. Appreciate that. And so just to kick off the conversation with the rules of procedure and that question directly, I kind of like having that discretion of whether it be the person sitting in this chair, sitting in Roger's chair, or having it be a police officer. In some ways, I think having the police officer was very helpful, especially in swearing in. It feels more official at that time as compared to just your literal neighbor swearing you in. So personally, I like that discretion. Anybody agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also the officer probably being a lot more closer to a lot of the details and stuff. Yeah,
Since we're hearing about it for the first time.
extremely helpful.
Great. Any other questions or concerns?
I have
Yep.
one, and I don't go to the Essex Junction Dog Park, but I'm wondering if and I don't know what the signage is there, but I'm wondering if because we're revising this, if anyone thinks we need to change the signage there to make people that use the park aware that there's an ordinance now, or does that make any sense?
Sure.
I think so.
It's not a big deal, but it might be kind of almost necessary in a way if a dog bites another dog there, so that people who are using the park understand that there is an ordinance in effect. It's not just a free for all.
That if your dog does harm another dog, then there can be ramifications to that.
Right. Right. I don't, as I say, I don't know what signs there are there now.
Yeah.
But
Can't remember.
it might be something to consider going forward, because that's a place where you could imagine some kind of an incident happening.
Yeah, there are some signs now. I don't recall exactly what they say.
Yeah.
It's been a few months since we've been there.
Yeah.
But they're also on the dog park does have a website, or at least a section within EJRP's website, and there is a copy of the sign there. But it does not say anything about, if your dog bites another dog, there could be ramifications. So it's
Might be something to think about.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we can definitely think about that. They're also, in the somewhat distant future, we've got plans to bring the park ordinances forward as well, to think through both tree farm, but also recreation parks in general.
Right.
So we may be making more changes than just this
Okay.
when we look at that.
It's a pretty comprehensive sign, actually. But nothing about where to report an incident on it, which
Yeah, that's
is great.
idea. Yeah.
Great idea.
That's
I
a good
mean,
idea.
phone number for the police department and the process, maybe just a link to the process or something. QR code,
I was going to say a little QR code that can.
get them right to the report.
Yep. So going back to the memo and those three questions, we've pretty well addressed the third one. With the first about the capability of letting all members speak, you have Claudine's answer there, as well as time limits. You have Claudine's answers, and so going into the rules of procedure on page 8 of our packet, you see some notes or a couple of comments, such as on that first page where it says Claudine is advising against this. I would be okay striking that language, so except for the complaint/victim, that statement that's highlighted.
Sure.
Oh, Amber, sorry, I can't see that your hand's up. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You could let's finish this discussion because this was actually part of what I was going to talk about. So,
Okay. Dan, George, Amber, you good with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
And then that second one, Claudine advising against the restriction of at least 1 day before the hearing. I would be okay striking that, the at least 1 day before the hearing. Wait.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we're, which it sounds like not required to make a decision at the moment, at the end of the hearing, then we can, so.
Right. Can always stay and. Yep. So those were the only things that I wanted to just directly address. Amber, if you want to jump in.
I only have one typo thing. On the second page, at the very bottom of the document, like right above where it says signed, we're just missing the word of, so it should read, these rules may be amended by a majority vote of the members of the city council.
Right.
Good catch.
Got it.
Thank you.
So any other proposed changes, questions, comments, concerns on the proposed hearing or the rules of procedure? Okay, want to jump into the ordinance itself and any questions, comments, concerns from that?
No.
Amber?
I have a couple of typo stuff too and a question. Sorry. So we go from 501 to 502 to 502 again, but the table of contents is correct. It has 503 as the definitions. They just missed that in the actual section. You'll see right there.
Got it.
Question about under definition section C, the municipal officer. Is it an animal control officer or is it an animal control warden? I mean, it's just semantics, but I thought it was an animal control officer.
Sorry, which page?
Oh, you're on 50, what you now labeled 503.
503C.
You're on the right page, right
almost there.
there.
Yep, you're at the top there, municipal municipal official.
I got you.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's animal control officer.
Okay. And then the last, no, maybe not. Yes, no, I think so. Last change that I have is on 50, what is labeled now 505, falsifying documents. So next page, Regina. Yep, at the top there. I believe you should delete what was written as presented. Delete the word presented. So no owner shall knowingly present false documentation to the city clerk's office. It already said that, so we didn't need the word presented.
Yeah, that's true.
Got it.
That's it.
Sure, we were all going to get to those.
Yeah, they were on my list.
Thank you, Amber.
Yeah.
Missed every one of them.
I do have a,
Yeah.
I do have a question now with the scrolling back and forth. The concept of trespassing, just because we were going back and forth, I lost it. I didn't write it down.
The
G.
definition.
So 503G on page 12 at the near the bottom. Unless it was protecting its or defending itself, its offspring, another domestic pet or animal, on and on and on. Above that, unless the person is trespassing on the property of another animal. I guess I'm wondering, it just occurred to me, and so I didn't bring this up the last time we talked about it. If I'm walking down a street without a sidewalk and my dog is walking on the grass of a homeowner whose dog then attacks my dog, what's the definition of trespass in that case? Do they have to actually file a because that's a very typical scenario when one person's walking down the street and the dog that's on your lead, your dog is leashed walking on someone else's property, walking down the front yard, right?
Well, it's the right of way extends beyond the paved portion of the road onto that.
Yeah, I guess
You
that's
know,
just
the right of way is not just the road itself. You go, I mean, and then if the dog that's off leash, you're walking down without sidewalk, I'm interpreting you saying,
right, yeah.
is I see, somebody who has a property that you're walking past, a dog off leash runs off their property into the right of way of the road, now that dog has, it's not so much that they've trespassed, but they've attacked your dog in a public
So what,
location.
I guess that's the question, what part, since this is happening in the attacking dog's yard, let's say,
Yeah.
in this scenario, 6 feet in, 4 feet in on a 5-foot leash.
Because it's also in your neighborhood, those who are to the west on South Summit Street, those neighborhoods don't have sidewalks.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's
so
a
if
lot
you're
of-
walking in the
And even on a
right.
sidewalk, even when you're on a sidewalk, the road, grass, sidewalk, yard, where does that, so I guess I'm a
Well,
little, I'm just wondering
yeah,
what the trespass
that is a
definition
good
would
question. I
be.
mean,
Like,
my take on it would be it's there's discretion by the board when addressing these types of issues, just as much as speed limits. People say, what's the limit on speeding? Well, the speed limit's 25, you're doing 26. I can write you a ticket for 26. Do I do that? No. I can write you a warning. And so it's discretionary, I guess, unless you want everything to be black and white, then you're gonna have to really get.
I think that this might be pretty black and white. I mean, it with that word unless, I don't think there's
Right.
ambiguity there.
But then, like Roger said, you'd have to
because if my dog's the
Right,
attacking dog,
right.
I would say, well, clearly
Right.
they were trespassing. I
Right.
didn't say they could walk my yard.
and who's, unless you have video footage and you can actually, delineate where the property line is and where the right of way to the road or what have you exists, it's going to be he said, she said, they said, whatever. It's interpretation, so it's very ambiguous.
It just occurred to me. I'm happy to drop it. If we're thinking that either the legal right of way is fair game, or I kind of feel like ancillary crossing of a property is not trespassing, but
Mhm.
I imagine now that we're doing this dog on dog ordinance in a dense community, that certainly at some point we'll probably hear something about this, something like this, especially now that I brought it up. But
Yeah.
no, but I mean, seriously, that's
Right.
one of the first things that I would say if it were my dog, that I said, well, they were in my yard. Clearly it says here that they're, so it's,
Yeah, and I don't know that we want to, I'm just trying to think of an alternative.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't-
sure we want to
yeah.
remove
Mhm.
that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
I think we'd have two options. We either ask for the creation of a definition for trespassing, or we live with the ambiguity and see how it goes.
I feel comfortable as a board, I guess, that we can, during a hearing,
Mhm.
differentiate between intentional trespass and ancillary
Right.
incident.
Mhm.
I just wonder if we're going to see that come up again. So I'll leave it. It just occurred to me and I was concerned about it.
I think it's a very valid concern. Don't take my statement as trying to devalidate what you're saying. So in our charter, what we're capable of doing is we are allowed to change an ordinance within a meeting. So as long as we warn it in advance and we meet the definitions of our warning procedures, we can then in a future meeting change this without necessarily needing to wait 3 months. So I think that if we were to go forward with this process of let's go forward with it as it is, maybe ask Regina if you can go back with police department, Claudine, to see if there's some way to either make sure that we do have that discretion of would this ancillary stepping onto somebody else's property count as trespassing or not, or if that needs to be further defined, and then revisiting that in the future. So that we can still keep this process moving forward, get the ordinance in place,
Sounds great.
should something happen.
mhm.
Does that work for everybody?
Well, maybe I don't need to belabor this, but I'm just looking back in my past experience of work. People such as hunting, people owning not so much where we are, other than maybe Wickham Farms, large parcels of property. people have to post with the clerk's office, and it has to be the right posting of not hunting, no hunting allowed, all these types of things. So trespassing, unless you can show that you've given notice, you're not really trespassing, because no more than just anybody, when you're somebody running for political office in the village or the city of Essex Junction walks onto somebody's property, are they trespassing? No. So, I mean, it's very difficult
I
to,
get what you're saying. I
see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So,
Yeah. I think when it comes to enforcing a trespass order, or basically
Right.
enforcing a law out of everybody at this table, I think you're the one who has the most experience. So I certainly do take that.
And what happens generally is if there's a problem, especially if it's somebody that you're constantly going by that area.
Yep.
The police department or the enforcement agency for that area would issue a trespass notice. Generally, that's what we would do. And then you're given notice so that now and you violate that. That gives you some, some backing as far as taking action.
That's helpful.
That's all I had. Otherwise, it looked fun.
Okay.
I think this will be an evolving document as things pop up that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
imagine you've got this focus here.
Right.
You've got another one in here about dogs making noise and for more than 15 minutes, and it's very specific. What's not specific is what do we do about it? It's not really clear. Someone can complain, but then what? So I think we'll have to see what happens. I'm comfortable with it.
I think that it goes then into 519, the violations and penalties.
Yeah.
Where there can be a civil penalty of up to $800.
Yeah.
Though again, I'm sure that will then go to somebody to prove that it was the 15 minutes. And,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's you're.
Yep.
This will be an evolving document.
Absolutely. And considering we are evolving from a maybe half-page ordinance on dogs to a 7-page ordinance, I think that yes, we will continue to evolve this.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from the council? Not seeing any. Broadly to the public, any comments, questions, concerns, anything that you've heard on this one? Both in person and on Zoom? Okay, not hearing any. So if we go back to the memo, I would entertain the motion that we adopt the changes to our municipal ordinance.
Okay, I will move that the city council adopt the changes to the Essex Junction municipal ordinances to replace the existing Chapter 5 regulation of dogs in its entirety with the proposed Chapter 5 regulation of dogs, and adopt the rules of procedure for vicious and potentially vicious dog hearings.
Just a quick friendly amendment, just as amended at this meeting.
As amended at this meeting.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Raj. Any discussion from the council? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Great, so that passed unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience as we've taken this process. Really do appreciate that and your understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully we don't have to see that instance again. All right, and so now into business 6C, discussion consideration of the water service line inventory loan.
So, by October 2024, there's a new federal requirement that all municipalities who have water systems have to do inventories of residential water service lines to identify lead pipes. So there is, through, I think it's the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's been a significant amount of money put into from the federal government to the state, and the state has decided to put in a significant amount of money to the drinking water revolving loan fund to help municipalities do this inventory. So the funding is it's available. It's a 0 interest loan. you have to start paying it back in 5 years in 5 annual payments. So you have 10 years to actually pay it back. We have to do this by October 2024, no matter what. So we're either coming up with how much this is going to cost out of the budget right now, or taking advantage of at least having a 10-year time frame to pay this back. What we think we need to do with the advice of the city attorney is actually ask the voters for this debt, because it is debt. There are some differing opinions out there. There are some sections of statute that give a little bit of wiggle room, particularly for these planning grants through the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund, because there's an assumption that ultimately you're going to evolve the planning loan into a construction loan. And if you do that, at the point where you get to construction, you definitely have to go to the voters to ask for the authority for the debt. In this particular instance, so far, the federal rules do not require that the municipality actually financially help switch over any lead service lines to non-lead service lines. So I, at this point in time, can't anticipate that we would go through construction. Having said that, there also is going to be a significant amount of money through this program to switch over those lines. So perhaps we would, there's no way to know right now because we don't know how many these there are, if there are any at all. So one recommendation here is to add this question to the warning, and as you see later in your packet, this is on the draft warning for the annual meeting. Other component of this memo is the suggestion to move forward with MSK Engineers as the sole source contract for this work. They have been right out of the gate working on this for, I want to say, over a year now. They've got a very strong, significant system set up. They've got a database that they've established. They are working for the state of Vermont for all of the smaller systems. So there are a group of 70 of us that are in the larger systems. The state is managing all of the smaller systems directly through a grant through MSK Engineers. Sorry, probably still a loan. I'm not certain of that though. To get this inventory work done. The other thing is that October 2024 is not very far away at all. And we want to get ourselves on the list so we can just get moving through this process. It's an involved process because the hope initially is that there is individual homeowners do the first level of review. They essentially take a photo of their service line from the inside, upload it to a database, it gets analyzed, and then we kind of move forward to the other steps. So it's just a kind of an evolved process, and MSK Engineers is suggesting that a year is at least helpful to get moving on this so you can get a draft plan in place in August. Because it's not just an inventory. Once we find these, we also have to establish a replacement plan for them. I think that's it.
Okay. So thanks to our friends outside of Vermont and in Washington, there's a requirement that this has to be done. The funding that came through is not to pay to do any of the work, but rather to give us a zero interest loan.
Yes. If we were a community that was under the median household income, actually, I think it's 120.1% of the median household income, we would have an opportunity for loan forgiveness, at least a portion of it to be forgiven. We are above 120.1% median household income, so we don't have that option.
Okay. And in terms of MSK and sole sourcing, the desire for, so the unique thing that they do that no other entity does is this part partnership they have with however many odd municipalities in the southern part of the state.
And they've been working with Champlain Water District, they're working with the town of Heinsberg, they're working with the town of Milton. They're did an initial presentation to the, I'm gonna get this association wrong, Vermont Rural Water Association, perhaps, a year ago, and yeah, they've just got a whole system set up, a number of staff that they're bringing on specifically to do this work and are just ready to go.
Okay.
Regina, in the course of all this, did you have any sense with talking with Rick Hamlin? Does he have any sense if we have a lot of these, if we have lead pipes still?
I have not talked to Rick Hamlin about it. Talked to Ricky Jones, who is on vacation, so sorry. Otherwise, he would have been here. We don't have a great sense.
Yeah.
I think he is aware of, there's also these goosenecks that eventually when the water service line gets to our main, he's got one lead gooseneck in his office because I think one was discovered at some point in time. But we don't have a great sense otherwise.
Okay.
And I will say the amount of money allocated for us in the intended use plan, which is what guides the drinking water revolving fund, it's likely the max. And hopefully we're not even coming anywhere near that. But they've allocated the money out, and that's the amount they allocated to us. So that's what we're assuming would potentially be the max, but hopefully not that much.
I'm fine with this. I'm not questioning what's been presented here, but I just, in my mind, I'm thinking that, they outlawed lead pipes at I don't know when, and you would just think that you would hate to think we're going to spend a lot of federal dollars chasing stuff that doesn't, you know that there's no lead there, but we're going to do it anyway. But is that what's going to be happening here?
Well, according to this, it was 1987, right? So that certainly hits my house if it's not been updated.
Yeah.
1950.
Yeah, I meant to look in more detail into the guidelines or the parameters, if there is a point in time where you can just say, okay, that whole neighborhood,
no, we don't do that.
no need to inventory them.
Right.
I didn't get to that part of the research.
Okay, all right. I don't want to go sideways here. That's fine.
Amber?
Regina, I was a little confused, hoping you can just clarify for me. Is the money allocated we're guaranteed that we're going to get funding through this program, or is there a potential that when we ask the voters to secure this loan, we won't get this loan and we'll have to come up with a backup solution for this?
My understanding, so in the current intended use program, they have an entire 2-page table that's identifying all of these, the larger water systems and the exact amount of money that they've allocated towards us. It also identifies the loan forgiveness for those folks who qualify for the loan forgiveness. The exact amount of money will be determined more when we apply because it's based on water service connection. But my understanding is it's laid out in the intended use plan, and that's basically what guides their funding formulas going forward.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
No.
Would entertain the motions.
I'll do it. I move the city council ask the voters to authorize a planning loan through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for a project in the Water Enterprise Fund to complete a service line inventory and lead service line replacement plan in the amount not to exceed $433,700 to be financed over a period not to exceed 10 years, and to authorize a sole source contract with MSK Engineers for the water service line inventory and replacement plans, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract with MSK Engineers and apply for the loan following voter authorization.
I'll second.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, George. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. So that passed unanimously. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for all that work, Regina.
Do appreciate it.
Thanks
And
to Ricky. He was like, We gotta do this.
He's got that lead joint in his eye. It's,
If we don't, I'm sure he would have come in here with that gooseneck pipe.
he would, and we'd all like to see it.
When he gets back, if he could just bring that back.
Just bring it in.
Do a roadshow with it. So moving to 6D, a discussion consideration of the FY24 proposed budget and capital program budget.
So, you got a memo in your packet. Share that. So you've been through 2 public hearings. We have identified the changes that we've talked about in the last 2 meetings. We also were able to offset the changes that were made in the last 2 meetings by moving the paving increase amount to the lot fund. And essentially that still sits in the streets budget, but there's a transfer in from the lot fund for $20,000. And then there's a stormwater grant match that we identified the need for in the stormwater budget. And so we've also felt like those both were good uses of the lot fund. So with that, what you've got in your packet is an $11.4 million budget. That estimated tax rate increase over the current FY23 combined city and town tax rate is 1.3% for $33.88 extra on a $280,000 property. What you also have here in the memo are the utility rates that will be finalized in the spring, but what we're looking at right now is an approximate increase of 8.5%. Then the memo also includes the operating budget amount, the enterprise funds, and the capital budget amounts. And the staff recommendation is essentially you are out of time tonight. So if there's any other changes, Jess is out there in the online world and prepared to make changes in real time in the budget if you would like them, so that we have the correct numbers for the warning tonight.
And just in terms of how close we have cut things, we literally have staff here who are going to take our motion, type that into the warning, and get us to sign it before we leave tonight, so that way we can be legal with this and not have to do a do-over. So saying that as we need to make decisions tonight. No more delaying.
But no pressure.
None, oh no, there's pressure there. So also since this point, or since the packet was put together, Regina, Raj, and I and Jess had a little bit of an online conversation talking about things like the code enforcement officer and how a portion of that person's work is going to be to start and implement a rental registry. The rental registry is designed to be an enterprise fund. And so the concept of, could we take a portion of that health officer's salary and benefits and pay for it with the local option tax, which when law is discussed, we're talking about a local option tax funding. And so Regina and Jess had talked about that they believe that they can confidently take 50% of the code enforcement officer's salary and benefits and pay for that through the local option tax, so that way in future years that would then be paid for through rental registry funds. So that would help to reduce things as well. And there was also a mistake in the calculation for the adult services director's position, where their benefits were showing for a full year's worth of benefits instead of just half the year's worth of benefits. So that also would reduce the benefit. And Jess, please correct me if I'm wrong. Doing those things would change our total budget so that the tax rate increase would be 0.4%. As compared to the...
That is correct.
Great. And I assume then you would have the updated budget numbers so that way when we have to make our motion, you can read them to us and we can just say what Jess said.
Absolutely. I've got mock budget files ready to roll.
Love it. So in terms of what this budget does, this budget allows for us to be the fully independent city of Essex Junction. This budget allows for us to no longer share services such as the clerk, which, since we have the floor anyway, thank you, Susan, for doing yet another town meeting, and to then have to then do our city meeting, our city voting. So hopefully this is your final year of ever having to do 2 municipal annual meetings in 1 year. I appreciate your work just last night, working until however late into the night and being here again. So thank you. Yeah. So hopefully just once. So no longer sharing our clerk, no longer sharing our finance department, no longer sharing other services that I'm blanking on at the moment. I'm sorry. But instead being able to provide those for our community on our own. Any questions, comments, concerns? Council?
Just one more comment to pick up on what you were saying, and also by bringing on the ordinance enforcement person and bringing on the planner allows us to not wait to start addressing ordinance issues that we have building up throughout the city to really start addressing housing and how we're going to address a housing issue we have here, as well as a rental registry. These are things we hope to do in the future, and I think we're learning that the need is greater than we expected. And as far as the ordinance enforcement and a lot of that, I think we've asked the community to wait for a number of years with the hopes that merger would bring all that forward. And I think we have just an enormous amount of pent up need that wasn't addressed with merger, and then another year of waiting for separation. And I think what this, by adding these positions now, it doesn't kick the can further down the road 1 or 2 or 3 years to bring those online. So while we did anticipate a savings, and while we did anticipate not adding these positions originally, I think in the course of the past year, and over the course of all of those merger and consolidation efforts, I know I personally am just really floored by how much I'm seeing in terms of need for all of that, and the work the Housing Commission's doing, and just the time and effort that the various committees we're going to need, we've had, and we don't have staff to work and support. And so I think, yes, we did anticipate having a decrease in taxes. We would have without some of these positions, and without the impact from inflation that I don't have a good handle on the number that we're dealing with, just, but it was somewhere around 7 or 8% that we're seeing on top of that. So this is an ask, but I like the changes that we were able to make to bring it down to a full percent, 4.9% to a $10 increase on the average house. Not exactly what we intended to do, but I think that the need is there for sure.
I will note in passing, the city council stipend increase is acceptable. I appreciate the compromise there. I think we don't need to have that discussion. I'm going to repeat the one thing I've said in the past. I really urge the board, I won't be here, but I really urge the board, once you really understand what the lot is going to generate, to please designate a chunk of that and get into the habit of putting a great big semi-painful chunk of that away, because the one thing we have to keep in mind from separating from the town, the one advantage of being that merger might have brought us was you had much more financial capacity in in the event of some kind of a catastrophe or some kind of a problem. And this goes as well for the town of Essex as well for the city of Essex Junction. We have less financial capacity individually. And my big concern looking at climate change, looking at climate events, again, as I said, one more big serious significant rain event like we've had in the past, and you could find yourself in a serious hole. So it'd be really, no pun intended, put some money away for a rainy day, because you're going to need it. And I know there's going to be all kinds of great creative ideas of what we want to do with our lot, but I would be more like the ant than the grasshopper here and try to put a big chunk of it away.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I'm totally happy with the rest of the budget. Not happy, but I can live with it.
Does anybody ever really get everything we want?
It wouldn't be government if that happened.
Exactly. Any other questions? Not seeing anything in the audience, not seeing anything on Zoom. Jess, do you want to read off the changed numbers?
I will, and I'm also gonna put them in the chat so that Ashley can copy and paste. All right, so the total FY24 proposed budget with the changes is $11,421,171. And of that to be raised in property taxes is $10,420,986.
Thank you, Jess. I would entertain the motion to approve of the various fiscal year 24 budgets with the changes that Jess Morris presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Great, so that passed unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience. We did it, the first budget for the full city. It's exciting.
That wasn't hard.
No, not hard at all. Just another day. So jumping into the discussion and consideration of the warning for the annual meeting.
Oh, sticky note. The warning was revised, so I think
Alright.
it doesn't work in the bookmark. So it's page 87 in your PDF packet. Share it.
Only page 87.
Yeah.
Right.
A little more than halfway.
Okay, so you've got the draft warning here. The informational meeting that we've talked about will be online only, and it'll be at 6 p.m. on Monday, April 10th. We've got all of the ways to participate in that here in the warning. Trying to make it clear that no voting of any kind will take place that night. Everything is via Australian ballot. And there's just a summary of what the questions are. Ooh, sorry, went too far. So Article 1, those are the numbers that Jess just read off for us. Then you've got the charter change questions. So there are 2 questions for the changes to section 206. One adds the concept of city councilor can't hold city employment unless you're allowed to by state statute. And that essentially it was the example of the health officer. For a month there, we didn't have a health officer. And so Andrew had the privilege of doing that. Was forced to do that by state statute. And so just correcting that for those cases that may come up. Article 3 is this other change that's proposed to section 206. And this is taking out the time frame between when a city council member gets off the council and when they can become an employee. As written, you have to wait a year before you can do that. And this would eliminate that waiting period. Article 4 describes the changes to the moderator section of the charter. So currently the charter requires that the voters shall elect the moderator every single year. And it still talks about that moderator role being for the annual meeting. That is unnecessary going forward because we're not doing any voting during the annual meeting. So this changes it to the council can appoint the moderator every year, and that person presides over the informational meeting. Article 5 is a change to the charter that talks about currently the voters have to every single year vote on when the next annual meeting is going to be a whole year later. In practice, it's will be more flexible and helpful if the council can make that decision by January 1 of each year. Then we have Article 6, which is asking the voters to make the annual meeting date for next year, because we can't make that change yet. And we probably will have the same question even next year also, because with the charter changes, the legislature needs to approve those if the voters approve those changes.
All perfectly clear.
Yeah. Sometime by 2035, this will all be worked out.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfectly clear.
Then Article 7 is the question that we talked about earlier in your agenda for the debt for the drinking water revolving loan fund. Article 8 is the officers. There'll be one moderator, 2 city council members, and 1 library trustee.
Thank you, Regina. Any questions, counselors? And sorry, just as you were talking, I was just double checking through an interfaith calendar, and you too, Raj.
Yep.
And sorry I did not do this before.
We
I'm not seeing anything
No, this is like the
on
fourth
April
time.
9th. Okay,
So do not want to go through that again.
we looked as well.
Yeah, I
made that
figured.
mistake once. Yeah.
I believe Ramadan is ending that day.
Mhm. Great.
But-
And so we would change within Article 1 the numbers based upon what we just moved earlier. And so again, those numbers were the total budget of 11,421,171, and then the amount to be raised in taxes would be 10,420,986. So if there are no other questions, seeing none, I would entertain the motion of approving the City of Essex Junction warning. Sorry, I was looking for motion language.
Yeah, sorry.
Is that this
On
one?
a handy piece
That's not
of
this one.
paper, I didn't put it on.
No worries.
Oh.
Yes.
It's not
No,
on
it's
there.
not.
No, it's not that one.
Nope.
Do we
it's
need
not
to
on.
read all of the articles in the motion?
Susan?
No?
Adopt the warning for the.
All right,
adopt
I'll
and
move
sign
the-
the warning for the.
Okay, I'll move that we adopt the warning for the informational hearing on April 10th, 2023, and the annual meeting of April 11th, 2023, as amended.
Thank you, Raj.
I'll second.
Thank you, George. Any discussion?
Only that I hesitated because I was like, 2023.
I know.
We just talked about 20, never mind.
No, it's just a month away.
It's okay.
And Susan, we're good with that language in your opinion? Great.
You're gonna sign it, so.
Right. Then with no other discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. So that passed unanimously again. Thank you all. And now we know what we're voting on. So next, we have an executive session item. So going, right,
Yeah.
so going into consent. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Yep. Whatever.
Dan, I think you get that one.
Okay.
Yeah, you hadn't yet. So Dan will get that one. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Nay. Great, so no one did. Passed unanimously. And into the reading file and council member comments. There were two things I wanted to raise to you all. One is, as staff are putting together the annual report, there's going to be a dedication to the village, thanking the village for its existence, the recognition that the village does not exist any longer. But also, if there are thoughts into another human, another person who should be dedicated, or the annual report should be dedicated to. If you have any thoughts, if you could please pass those along to Regina before the end of the day tomorrow. Looking at Ashley as well.
A little bit more time.
Yeah,
Little
we have until next week to get that one to the printer, so. But if you get it by Monday, that would be great,
Great,
so you can write it.
great. And along that line, one of the things that we have done in the recent past and would love to see us do again is to just have some informal coffee chats, if you will. So the ability where we go, say, the Nest, go to Nomad, go to Boxcar, and just to be available to be able to answer questions, advertise it out in advance. If Regina can make that work within her schedule, have Regina join. If you all are okay with that, I can send out a doodle to do some signups. So that way we can try and disperse the events and who will be in attendance for that.
Yep. Along that line, I know we did it maybe once years ago, off-site,
Yep.
meeting at a neutral location, the Maple Street Park, or one of the venues, the pavilion at Maple Street Park, I think is where we were for. But you know, pick a location. I mean, it'd just be kind of nice when the weather's accommodating, but
right.
obviously not in the winter. But that would be something nice.
Right. In the past, I remember joining Andy Watts and Mike Plagman over at a basketball game at the high school. Yep. If in general, we are all independently elected individuals, of course, all more than welcome to do that at any point in time. You don't have to wait for something formally scheduled. So don't look at this as the only opportunity to do that. Please feel free to walk around or do that at your leisure. So I will send that out shortly. Yep, those were the only two things I had. Anybody, anything else? Then
The interesting article about rescue, I was just curious where we are with that multi-municipality communication to that, like if anything's come of that or has it been sent? We weren't signing that completely, were we?
we did not sign it.
Okay, good.
Nope.
All right. That's now that I think about it. Okay, that's all.
We have met with the other towns and Essex Rescue once so far. We've got another meeting scheduled.
The end of March.
I don't need to know when. It's
Soon. But yeah, I think it's collectively figuring out what can be done there.
okay.
So if there's nothing else,
Need to read both of these for the two.
just the bottom one.
I move that the city council enter an executive session to discuss a personnel evaluation pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A3 to include the city council and city manager.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. All in favor, great. Pass unanimously. So then we will take a few minutes for a break. We will not.